Hello, my name is Chris Rourke. I'm going to be giving you a presentation today covering a few different topics here. We'll talk about conflict at work and how to resolve those conflicts. We'll talk about negotiation, also delegation and the 5 rights of delegation. And we'll also talk about a healthy work environment and what that's intended to look like. So jumping into our conflict scenario, I'm a registered nurse in a cath lab. A lot of our patients come down to us in their NPO, and so they've not eaten in quite some time, so they're already a little ornery, a little irritated. And then for our heart casts, we still utilize the groin approach a lot of times. So post-procedure, they're going to be laying flat for usually a minimum of at least 3 hours. So jumping forward to that scenario, post-procedure, you get your patient there, they're laying flat, they've been laying flat for a couple hours, they're starting to get a little irritated. They want to move around, they're starting to move their leg a little, so I'll have to come over and tell them, hey buddy, you need to lay flat for just a little bit longer, bear with me. They start getting a little argumentative because it looks like them that they're not bleeding anymore, they're good to go, but they still need to kind of be flat for a little bit longer. So with that being said, we'll kind of go into some of the resolutions of these conflicts that you can get into. There's compromising, there's competing, there's cooperating and accommodating, there's smoothing, avoiding, and collaborating. With compromising, each party gives up something that he or she wants. Both parties need to try to give up something of equal value for this to really work. And then it really becomes a win-win situation when both parties believe they've won more than the other person. And that's when it really works good. And there's competing, which is one party, they try to get what they want at the other's expense. Managers may use competing when a quick or an unpopular decision needs to be made, which typically leaves the loser angry. There's cooperating and accommodating. One party tends to allow the other one to win in these scenarios. The opposite of competing would be cooperating. One party sacrifices his or her beliefs and allows the other party to win. Though typically the party that sacrifices down the road often expects something in return. There's smoothing, which is where there's a focus on agreements rather than disagreements. Managers also can use this if they want to get someone to accommodate or cooperate with another party, but it usually doesn't resolve the conflict. Just kind of patches over it for a little bit. There's avoiding. Parties are aware of the conflict, but they choose not to acknowledge it, or they don't attempt to resolve it. Sometimes this is utilized if it's like small disagreements, when the cost of dealing with the conflict exceeds the benefits of solving it. Maybe if it should be solved by people above your pay grade, or if like one of the parties is way more powerful than the other. That the conflict remains only to reemerge later, because it doesn't actually solve anything, you're just avoiding it. And then there's collaborating, which is typically the best method. All parties work together to set aside original goals and establish a new common goal. It really works best to achieve long-term benefits. But it requires mutual respect and open and honest communication and shared decision-making powers for collaboration to work. Collaboration is what I would use, typically working in the cath lab, or anywhere. Just as I said, it typically works best where you kind of put aside your differences and come up with a new goal, and it typically works best. So with negotiation, which is what we'll jump into next, there's a couple phases of that, and we'll start with pre-negotiation. You want to be prepared when you're going into a negotiation. You want to make sure you're gathering as much information as possible regarding the issue to be negotiated. You want to determine the incentives of the person you're negotiating with, what's driving them. You want to determine a starting point, trade-offs, and the bottom line. And then you want to look for hidden agendas, whether they're yours or the other person's. That will always help you out too. You've got to actually, during the negotiation, you want to maintain your composure. Always want to appear calm and collected and self-assured. At least part of this assurance comes from having adequately prepared for the negotiation. So that comes in pre-negotiation. If you're prepared during the negotiation, you'll do well. You want to make sure you're assertive. You want to use good communication skills. You want to make sure you're patient. There's a 70-30 rule that Mr. Brodow talks about in 10 Tips for Negotiating. He says listen 70% of the time and speak only 30% of the time. And then you want to avoid using destructive techniques, and we'll talk about these destructive techniques here shortly. And then you've got your kind of post-negotiation, which is where you're going to restate what's been agreed on, both verbally and in writing. And then you really want to thank all the participants for their contributions to a successful negotiation. Just as it is important to start the formal negotiation with some pleasantries, it's also good to close on a friendly note as well. So those destructive techniques that we're talking about, there's ridicule, and the goal in using ridicule is to intimidate others involved in the negotiation, just kind of bullying them around and bossing them around. Ambiguous or inappropriate questioning, that's just kind of pointless questioning that might take place. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything. There's flattery. Flattery is another technique that makes true collaboration and negotiation very difficult. The person who's been flattered may be more reluctant to disagree with the other party in the negotiation. Therefore, their attention and focus is diverted. And there's sadness. Individuals in negotiation tend to concede more to sad participants. Helplessness, and then there's aggressively taking over, and that's it's, before the other member realizes what's happening, you're kind of controlling the negotiation, and if that happens, the negotiation needs to stop. Both parties need to back off, and if it's happening to you, you need to just let that other party know that you need to stop and take some time to think about things, because it's not heading in a good direction. So now we're going to jump into delegation, and then there's 5 rights of delegation that if you can follow these 5 rights, you'll be heading down a good path. There's a right task, and that is making sure that you're delegating the right task for that patient. So if you're busy discharging a patient and you need to delegate that a medicine needs to be given to a certain patient, that you're delegating that right task. You don't want to mess that up at all, because that's can lead to a significant incident. You want to make sure that you are delegating a task in the right circumstance. You want to be in the appropriate patient setting. Make sure you have available resources or any other relevant factors considered. You don't want to, with that circumstance, in that setting, you don't want to be maybe telling a PCT to go give a patient a full bath when their family just got there to visit them. That's not the right time. It should have been done either before or can wait till after. You also want to make sure with the right person that you're delegating the right task to the right person. You don't want to be delegating if you work with LPNs in certain states they can't give IV medicines. You don't want to be telling one to go give a certain IV drug when they legally aren't able to do that. You also, with right direction and communication, you also want to make sure that you're giving clear, concise descriptions of the task, including its objective, so that no one's left in the dark. You want to make sure you're giving clear direction. And then there's right level of supervision. You want to make sure that you're appropriately monitoring and evaluating the intervention that you are delegating. Just kind of following up on that task to make sure it's been done properly. So as a scenario we can use is a charge nurse. You have to delegate multiple tasks, and you want to make sure you're utilizing those 5 rights, whether you're having PCTs, bathe patients, you're having a nurse put in a Foley for you per se, or you're having nurses start IVs. You want to make sure you're doing the right thing at the right time. You're telling the right person to do it. All these are going to help benefit and improve patient outcomes if you're utilizing those 5 rights. Some errors that people run across when delegating is under-delegating. frequently is the result of the individual. They don't want to put off that they can't do the task, that they lack the ability to do that task. They think that if they're delegating a task out, that people will think that they can't do it. Or they also think that the task might not be able to get done in time, so they think they can do it faster themselves. So those are a couple reasons people might under-delegate. There's over-delegating, often due to the managers or the person delegating, whoever it is, their poor time management, or they just feel insecure about completing the task themselves, so they might over-delegate. And then there's improper delegation, which is delegating at the wrong time to the wrong person or for the wrong reason. You're just doing everything wrong. So now we're going to jump into a healthy work environment and what that is supposed to look like. And according to the American Nurses Association, they say that a healthy work environment should be safe, empowering, and satisfying. It's a place of physical, mental, and social well-being, and it supports ultimate health and safety. At Orange Park, I definitely feel like I work in a healthy work environment. I work in the cath lab, actually, and there's good communication. Definitely have to have good communication working inside someone's heart. Everyone needs to be on the same page. The team collaborates well. We work very well with our doctors. They give good orders, and we follow those well and carry out orders. Effective decision-making, appropriate staffing, and then meaningful recognition. Every time we save someone's life, we run a lot of STEMI call and come in all the time, and managers, they'll recognize us. We get letters from patients all the time, and that just makes for even more of a healthy work environment, just getting that recognition as well. To maintain a healthy work environment, they say that most effective leaders create a healthy work environment. If you can consider people first, if you consider your workers as people first and workers second, and have policies that help focus on their well-being as individuals, that helps maintain a healthy work environment. And then making sure that people are getting feedback and praise for a job well done. Everyone loves that. That reinforcement really helps a lot. And then create a work environment that honors individuals and brings a sense of presence and responsibility and integrity into the moment and into their work environment, and you won't be going wrong with that. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Here's a couple of references.